Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah. Arise, giving all praise to Allah, the Father of the universe, cherisher and sustainer of all the boundless universes. We extend the highest of honors to His Holy Divine Prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We extend high honors as well to his forerunner, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who did indeed warn and stir up the nations. I extend high honors to the Moorish flag, the red flag with the green five-pointed star in the center. These 5 points represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. These are the 5 highest principles known to man. I extend high honors as well to the American flag, also known as the Stars and Stripes. This flag exists as a constant reminder that the European nations, the Roman nations, owe you, the Moors, compound interest. I extend the honors to noble Sheik staff, noble Vanguard staff, who keep the peace, and giving honors to you, the Ills and Bays, for without you there is no Moorish movement. Islam, Moors?
Islam.
How's everyone in the holy day?
All is well.
Praise Allah, praise Allah. Tonight, I want to demonstrate on an ideal part, so. The word promise and what it entails. The great God of the universe, known to the Moorish Americans affectionately as Allah. Allah's name has come down to us throughout the annals of history, from our Canaanite Moabite ancestors all the way to their descendants, our Moorish ancient fathers and mothers, all the way down to our Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the Redeemer of the Moorish Americans, who returned the word Allah to us. All throughout the scriptures, of Allah, there's often various different promises that are made, right? And in the current day, because we've lost sight of all the things that our ancestors have brought, we've forgotten those promises, those sacred covenants, and the obligations relative to such. Islam. So, tonight I just want to hit on a few. I'm going to lead with the great Quran of Muhammad. Okay? The reason why I'm going to touch on the great Quran of Muhammad is because there's no talking about or invoking the name of the ancient Moorish fathers without understanding the great Quran of Muhammad. The reason why I say that is, Moors are, when you run down the history of the Moors, the most convenient history is, between 711 and 1492 AD when the Moors occupied Spain, right? For a period of 781 years, right? 800 years. And the primary ideal that they went and built that glorious civilization upon were the ideals contained in this book. Now, it wasn't solely this book, right? Because the ancient Moors were also the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery system, right? They were also the custodians of the wisdom of Palestine. They were also the custodians of that which was in India, all right? And all of that they found and were able to square with this book. Just like in our day and time, in these modern days and times, we're able to square all that came down to this book with this book that was divinely prepared by our prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the noble prophet. Islam, Moors? All right? But tonight, I'd like to draw from Surah 30, right? Surah 30. Right? The word surah right? If you ask, the Pale Arabs to translate this word over for you, they tell you the word means chapter. Chapter 30, right? However, when you read the language, you begin to study for yourself, right? The prophet said, if I can get you to thinking, you'll save yourself, right? Once you start studying, you find out the word doesn't mean chapter. It means image or reflection. Okay? And the reason why that is because all the words that are combined in that particular surah are to create an image in your mind of what is to be. Okay? That is the concept that the Quran of Mecca is coming down with when it's giving you each verse. Okay? So tonight I want to deal with Surah 30, which is called Surah Al-Rum. Okay? El Rum literally means the Romans. Now, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, in his Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, warned you about the history of the Roman nations relative to the Moorish nations. All right? And that history has been one of conflict. That history has been one of denationalization, of theft, hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything at arms. Right? So it's no strange happening that in the text of our forefathers, we will find some wisdom regarding that, and not just some wisdom, but an entire image or reflection named after these particular people. Right? Surah Al-Rum, or the Romans. Right? It starts off with 3 letters at the top of the verse. Right? Which are the letters? Which in Arabic are called Alif, Lam, and Mim. Come down in English, if you were to transpose it over, it would be A-L-M, which as a word, this word literally means science or to know. Okay? So it starts off, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, most merciful. Alif Lam Mim, right? Or coming down with the meditative concept of the word science, or there's something that you should know. Verse 2, or ayat 2 they call it. The word ayat does not mean verse like they tell you. Ayat means miracle. Okay? Ayat 2 it says, the Romans have been defeated. Now at the time of this verse, that wasn't the case, right? Because during the time of the revelations of the Quran of Muhammad, which was from the year 610 to 632, over a 22-year period. It took 22 years for the final complete text of what you know as the Quran of Muhammad to be revealed. 22 years, right? At that time, the Roman nations were still strong. During the time of the Prophet Muhammad, the emperor of Rome's name was Heraclius. Okay? So, like most things that prophets say, and the time that they say it, it seems like it makes no sense. Right? But this is why they're called prophets. Okay? It says, the Romans have been defeated. Verse 3. In a land close by. But they, even after this defeat of theirs, will soon be victorious. Within a few years, with Allah is the command in the past and in the future. All right? Now, what this is giving wisdom to is the period of time known as the Crusades. All right? And I hope those of you, I saw some people taking notes earlier, please continue. Crusades. Crusades were a period or a series of 6 to 9 wars, depending on the historians that you study. They go back and forth because some wars seem to have merged together. All right? And the control, the whole war was over the control of Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem was a capital of an ancient land called Canaan. It's known as the Holy Land. It's also known as, it literally means the city of peace. Right? Jerusalem, which most people don't know, also happened to be the first direction of prayer of the Muslims. It wasn't Mecca. It was a period of time, in the early stage of the Muslims, that they were facing Jerusalem. Why were the Muslims facing Jerusalem in prayer? Because Jerusalem was the ancient holy city. The prophet gives us a degree about, all the inhabitants of Africa descend from the ancient holy land of Canaan. All right? So the first direction of prayer was there. The Europeans wanted it badly. If I was to go over to the map, Jerusalem would have been this area right here. Okay? So anyone who had, control over Jerusalem had control over the whole Mediterranean Sea. Back in those days, you had what was known as the Silk Road, which went all through here. It came through this way and came up into what you now know as Europe, right? So whoever controlled Jerusalem controlled the entire trade from that particular area, all right? Which also connected down into this region in here, which is northern and northwestern Africa, which all across there began the what they call the Trans-Saharan trade route, which linked up with the Silk Road, which gave Asiatic peoples what they call contiguous, which means continuous, flow of commerce and trade from the west coast of Africa all the way even unto China and Japan and so on and so forth. And it didn't stop here westward because we were coming across the Atlantic and trading into the Americas with our brothers and sisters here. Islam Moors? All right? But Jerusalem was a holy city. It wasn't the holy city, because holy city is where the holy people are. Islam? Another point it was Mecca. At another point it was Luxor, Egypt. Another point it was Cordova in Spain. Another point it was, one of the cities in India, Jagadhav. Islam Moors? All right? But moving forward it says, or we're continuing in verse 4, Surah 30, Holy Quran of Muhammad. On that day shall the believers rejoice. The word believer is a bad translation. The word that they have there in Arabic is mu'min, which means faithful. Okay? Faithful. The Prophet gives return the word faithful to us in Act 7 of our divine constitution and bylaws. Islam? There'll be those that will tell you that what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought is out of sync with what was dealt with in this Quran of Muhammad, which is not true. Prophets do not contradict one another. Islam? Ayat 5. With the help of Allah, He gives victory to whom He will, and He is exalted in might, most merciful. Now stop it. Ayat 6. It is the promise of Allah. Never does Allah fail from His promise, but most men know not. Islam? So in Allah's record, we read that, if a promise is issued by Allah, Allah will surely come through on that promise. Islam? In the halls of the civilized, or in the halls of men, come down a particular ideal or a statement. And that statement is, my word is my bond is my life, and I will give my life before my word shall fail. Right? For those of you who might be 40 or over, which, might only, I know 2 people in this room that's 40 or over, Asiatics don't age. But back in my day, I ain't gonna put that on y'all. Back in my day, we had a phrase, you say, word is bond. Word is bond, words. We broke that down into just word, right? But we left the other half off. That part about giving your life before you break your word. We conveniently edited that part out, right? But this is the energy or the vibration of our forefathers, which the Prophet Noble Drew Ali returns to us in an ideal through symbolism of what is known as the hand press. One step to the right. This unity hand press, because Moors don't shake hands, we press hands. It shows firm foundation, right? And under that, it says unity, right? Meaning that when I put my hand in your hand, that's saying I put my life in your hands, right? Because your word, my life one day could very well depend on your word. Islam? But see, if you were raised under Negro, black, and colored, see, these are not just names, right? These are principles and ideals, right? So when the Prophet said, we cling to names and principles that delude to slavery, right? That's a heavy measure, because it's saying that you live your life by principles that slaves held to. And slaves only held to that which the Roman nations deemed would support them and keep them in power. Islam Moors? All right? From the Holy Quran of Muhammad, or the Great Quran of Muhammad. And surely Allah speaks the truth through His Holy Quran Prophet Muhammad. Islam Moors? Going to the Holy Quran, the Moorish Science of America, divinely prepared by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Right? We're going to go to chapter 33. Chapter 33, which is entitled Gratitude. Gratitude. Nobody, you need a pen? Sister, you need a pen?
Appreciate it.
Islam Moors, chapter 33, Holy Instructions from the Prophet, Gratitude. Again, this is chapter 33. Does anybody happen to know how many vertebrae you have in your spinal cord? In your spine? How many vertebrae?
33.
33. Islam? It's no strange chapter. This chapter is called Gratitude. Islam Moors? That's another. See, in the book of Genesis, they call that Jacob's ladder. Islam Moors? Islam Moors? Islam. Right? So, it says, Instruction 1. As the branches of a tree return sap to the root from whence it arose, as a river poureth its streams to the sea, whence the spring was supplied, so the heart of a grateful man delighteth in returning a benefit received. Right? He acknowledgeth his obligation with cheerfulness. He looked on his benefactor with love and esteem. Islam was? Wow. See, the prophet is returning to us a character. You know? He's returning to us dignity. Right? Just think in your last creation, your last 7 days. Go back. It says, masterminds, backwards through the ages, masterminds trace themselves unless they know. Right? This being the case, when you go back in these past 7 days of yours, think of the conversations that you had. Right? Just reflect. Right? Everybody sit back and just reflect. Think of everybody that you talked to, all the business dealings you did, you were at work, or, you know, or dealing with the kids or relatives, or whatever, right? Count how many times to yourself you heard the words in those conversations. Integrity.
0.
Honor. You say 0? Honor. Character. Dignity. No? And see, the problem with that is that if those words are in your conversation, that means the principles that support them aren't existing in your lives. Salam was? See, we've been taught how to talk, but we haven't been taught how to communicate. That's the problem. That's the root of most of the problems that we get into. Because we know how to talk, we're talking back and forth. But don't realize it's a rule to a conversation. See, brother, if you're talking, I have to shut up. And not just shut up, I have to listen. Right? And when you're finished, I have to consider. Right? Because the three, like, let's say, the three aspects to a contract are offer, consideration, and acceptance. Right? So as you're talking, that's an offer. You're talking. Right? I have to consider. Then at the end of that, I could either accept or reject. And that's how we build. Right? But in Negro, Black, and Colored, and Ethiopian, how we're taught is, as you're talking, I'm already coming up with the counter to what you have to say. Which means that as you're talking, I got a brick wall built up, right? And I'm not willing to take one brick down to consider what you're saying. Right? That's the condition of our people. Islam? So Prophet, I'm just read those first 2 verses again, just so we can get that energy. As the branches of a tree. Now reflect on that, because again, that's called imperial data, right? So he's, you're looking at nature. So the Quran of Mecca, this book right here does that too, right? This book, I give you an example. This book right here says, if all the trees were pens and all the seas were ink, all of them will be exhausted before the words of Allah. Islam was? That means the thoughts of Allah cannot be circumscribed. Islam? All right? But it used nature, right? Because Allah knows that Allah created you. Most who made you? Who made you?
Allah.
Allah, right? So if Allah made you, He knows how you work, right? Knowing that the brain is a holographic computer, right? It doesn't think in words, it thinks in images. So you got to paint a picture when you talk to somebody. That's why Jesus spoke in parables. Islam? Right? So again, think about a tree. As the branches of a tree return sap to the root, so it's going downward, right? So the tree, off from the branches come the fruit, right? But off from the branch comes the essence of the fruit back down to the source from which it came. Islam was? From whence it arose, parts of it. As a river poureth its streams to the sea. They call those tributaries, right? Pouring back to the source from which it came. Whence the spring was supplied. So the heart of a grateful man delighteth in returning a benefit received. So somebody does something for you, right? It's natural for you to give back to that source, because without that source, you wouldn't have that thing. Islam? Why to us as Moorish Americans, it's, absurd for one to claim to be Moorish American Muslim, right? But give no honors to the Prophet Ali, or stand for that which he brought, because that's called being ungrateful. Islam, we have a whole degree on that, gratitude. Ayat 2, or instruction 2, he acknowledgeth his obligation with cheerfulness. He looketh on his benefactor with love and esteem. Most, how many times, like, you find yourself in a life position where you have to ask somebody for something, but a feeling of hatred almost right, developed in you because you hated to ask the person for something. Where does that come from? Right? Because when you do that, you separate yourself from society. You're in society to receive and confer reciprocal helps and mutual obligations. Islam, you're not here to do this thing by yourself. We're here for each other. And brother, if you hurt, I'm hurt. Right? And if you're suffering in silence, I'm going to hurt and not know why. If you let me know, I'm like, oh, that's why I probably felt that. Like the more said he said, I was going to demonstrate this, but the Sheik already demonstrated. We won mine, Morris. Right? I heard something this week, somebody posed a very intelligent question, a casual conversation. How does a riot start? Anybody ever been in a riot? A riot is a collective consensus that's going to go down right now. It doesn't take place by, look, we're going to tear this place up, it doesn't happen like that. This is like, let's go. So it's almost like you're downloading, right? Okay, that's a destructive, this is the holy thing, that's destructive. Let's go constructive. I remember, I'm going to go back to about, 70s, my era. I was like, from 72 to 79, that was a good era for me. But I remember when afros, right? Now, in let's say 70, there was no internet. We didn't have, y'all have the convenience of a whole bunch of stuff now. There was no internet. But if you traveled the width and breadth of the country, you see everybody wearing afros. How'd that happen? Anybody ever heard of the 100th monkey phenomenon? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay, so let me, for the benefit of that. So, there was a group of scientists that received a grant. And, part of their study was to go down to a particular island, right? And grab a certain group of monkeys and teach those monkeys how to wash off potatoes before they ate them. Okay? So, they grabbed a monkey here, monkey, two monkeys, slow process. They got to the point where they grabbed 100 monkeys and showed them how to wash the potatoes off before they ate them. So they was like, all right, experiment worked. So far as they were concerned, that was the experiment, right? See if they could do it. So they were like, let's go on the other side of the island and explore. Now, the monkeys that they were there, they were on the opposite side of the island, they watched them for a while, and they only inhabited that portion of the island. When they got to the other side of the island, where those monkeys didn't come and, cohabitate with these monkeys over here, they found that the monkeys over there on that side were already washing off the fruit that they would get before they ate it. They were like, how are they doing this? So then they surmised, they came with a theory called the 100th monkey phenomenon, which means basically that what they did was they took a total number of the monkeys on the island, and they realized that the 100 monkeys that they came about or whatever, that they initially taught, if you teach, let's say 10% of the population, or 10% of the population that's all monkeys, if you get 10% of the population to do any particular thing, the other ones will automatically start doing it. Islam? See, the Prophet Noble Ali, had no degrees from a college, didn't attend college. He wasn't in the upper middle class. He wasn't bougie. We call that nowadays, right? He was one of you. But in his demonstration, he got a certain amount of people to proclaim their nationality as Moorish American. And as a result of that, that began to spread like wildfire throughout the communities, where even the so-called upper and wealthy classes, I ain't no Negro, black, and cut. It became like sinful almost to call them that, because of that initial group that took the backlash, took the slander, took the hatred from those because they dressed differently. Anytime you do something differently, I can imagine, sister, if you walk with your turban all throughout the society, right? Some will understand you being yourself and nobody else. Other ones, why you got your hair wrapped up? Why ain't you got your hair? Girl, I know your hair hot. Girl, oh, I know my people. Because my wife has to live with me like that, so praise Allah. Thank you for staying with my crazy vibe. But this is what it is. Islam Moors? All right? But again, we have to be grateful to our benefactor, Prophet Noble Ali, because we could run around society not even knowing that we were ignorant. Like the Prophet says, where it is a shame to be ignorant, there he had no understanding. Islam? Let's move forward. Instruction 3. It says, and if to return it be not in his power, he nourisheth the memory of it in his breast with kindness. He forgetteth it not all the days of his life. The heart of the grateful man is like the clouds of heaven, which drops upon the earth, fruits, herbage, and flowers. But the heart of the ungrateful is like a desert of sand, which swalloweth with greediness the showers that fall, and buryeth them in its bosom, and produceth nothing. That verse right there is describing the condition of our people. Because we produce nothing but consume everything. So let me read that again. I'm not even going to burden no more. Let's just hit the first few words of that verse. Right? The heart of the grateful man, right, starts off being great. So if we were grateful, we would be producing. Right? Now let's square it. The prophet says, later in the Quran, he says, through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery. So what happened to us wasn't unique. It was unique in that everything was taken away. But every nation has suffered some form of slavery. And when they went through it, if you study it, they went through it because they were being sinful, which is clinging to principles that delude to slavery, and disobedient to the customs and traditions and the laws of their forefathers. Islam? Right? So if we were grateful, we'd be producing. And as a result of the fact that we're not, we produce nothing. It says, envy not thy benefactor. Now we envy those that have, don't we? Our people I'm talking about. We do that. It says, neither strive to conceal the benefit he hath conferred. So more is going to conceal will reveal. Islam? Now conceal is of the light. Reveal is of the light. The prophet said, but you must first have the light before you can reveal it. Islam? It says, for though to oblige is better than to be obliged, though the act of generosity commandeth admiration, yet the humility toucheth the heart, and is amiable, that means friendly, on the sight of both Allah and man. But, now this is called a caveat, which means a warning. The word but, right? But receive not a favor from the hand of the proud. To the selfish and avaricious have no obligation. The vanity of pride shall expose thee to shame. The greediness of avarice shall never be satisfied. Islam was, the prophet's not saying, you receive an obligation from a fool, from someone that's, vain, that's going to, give you something to hold it over your head in public. You know what I'm saying? The prophet warns us against that because they're giving it from them, not from Allah. Islam was? All right? Now, why did I draw from the Quran? I drew from the Quran because, firstly, it's law. Secondly, because we don't realize what the prophet gave us, right? This indeed is a religious book. It is, right? But as man unfolds, so does his God. So in other words, as you begin to grow in wisdom and start extending your learning of your studies, you're going to come across certain information that's going to make you travel backwards through the ages. Wait, the prophet said that. But I thought he said in a religious context. Why am I finding it in this context? That's the kind of master he was. He taught in such a way, right, where it's codified, and depending on the will of the user, it takes on a different shape and form. Islam? Islam. All right? I'm going to write on, did y'all get these notes right here? Islam. In the beginning, I said I was going to open up dealing with promise, what promise is, right? Research a man named Hugo Grotius. Hugo Grotius was Swiss, which means he's European, right? His period of time of study was circa, which means around, circa and circle is the same word, around the 1600s, okay? Hugo Grotius, along with a bunch of other European students, were students of what the Moors left behind. You gotta understand, when you got overthrown or defeated from power, right? Your seat of power was usurped, and your birthright was taken, right? And the things that you left behind, people got strong on, okay? The wisdom that you demonstrated as, this is just a part of our culture. This is just, it's only civilized to have a 99 to 100% literacy rate amongst the population, right? You gotta remember, when we came into Spain, European kings couldn't write their names. Islam? You gotta remember the European kings lived in barns. They didn't live in castles. We built those castles. Islam? And as a result, after the Moors got overthrown, the European used those as fortresses against us later, right? One of the oldest castles you're gonna find is in Abyssinia. I'm on the European style. You see the tower, looks like the tower, what's that piece in chess with the rook, I think it is, the castle tower. That's on that style. You go to Abyssinia, you see those same type castles, right? Which are called Ethiopia today, right? But clearly that's an Asiatic style of building, all right? But the point is, this one right here, Hugo Grotius, right? He was one of the early founders, European founders, right? When I say founder, the term found doesn't always apply to you. Like, the European has founding fathers in this country, right? But those aren't your daddy. If you were here last week, we covered the word pope and how the word pope means daddy, right? If you're calling the pope your leader, you're calling him your daddy, right? But Hugo Grotius was the European, I'll shorten it, Euro, founder of international law. Okay? I would suggest you get any writings by Hugo Grotius. And when you get these writings, you're going to find, before I even go there, modern day international law is tracing itself back to a lot of the writings from this individual here. His name will always come up when you study international law. Okay? Now, I want to go to one of his writings. This particular writing, just write down, if you write down in your notes, Hugo Grotius, chapter 11, write that down, and put on promises. It'll give you the original name of this book, which I believe is, if I'm not mistaken, On the Law of War and Peace. That was the original name of the book, On the Law of War and Peace. Okay? I want to read through this, and for those who know Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you'll hear it, and for those that don't, we'll square it. Right? Y'all all right? Islam. We in this together now. I don't want to burden. I ain't doing this. I'm not a preacher. Right? Respect to preachers. It says, the course of the subject next leads to an inquiry into the obligation of promises. Now, Prophet mentioned the word obligation several times throughout the chapter gratitude. Right? Now, what I'm about to read is legal terminologies on international law. Right? So they're not, per se, speaking about religion. Right? But you're going to hear terms from your religious text in this writing. Okay? It says, where the first object that presents itself is the opinion of Franciscus Cananus, which is obviously a European, a man of no ordinary learning. He maintained an opinion that the law of nature and of nations does not enforce the fulfillment of those agreements which do not include an express contract. Let me pause there. Who has a Quran with them? More, you got your Quran in your hand. Could you go to 48, chapter 48, last verse? Give me the last two verses if you don't mind. Yes. Please, Allah. Thank you. Everyone, chapter 48, last two verses. Islam.
Come all ye Asiatics of America and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights. Because you are not Negroes, learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We are trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come and link yourselves with the family of nations. We honor all true and divine prophets.
Islam. Surely Allah speaks the truth to his holy and divine prophet over Drew Ali. Islam, boys? But here it says, to maintain that, link yourself back with the families and nations. Here it says, here he maintains an opinion that the law of nature and of nations. Right? So there's a law of nature and there's a law of nations. So if there's a family of nations, clearly there's a law that guides and governs the family. Islam? How many people here have a family? I can't assume that because there's some orphans on earth, right? If you have a family, right, clearly in your home, it has to be law. If there's not law, there'll be anarchy, chaos. Islam? So same thing with the various different nations on the planet. They comprise one community. In Arabic, we call that ummah. Everyone say ummah.
Ummah.
Ummah. Good pronunciation. Y'all said y'all don't speak Arabic. The word ummah, right, which they say means community, right? The inference, because Arabic has a lot of inferred meanings, the inference is global community, okay? And the word ummah, the root of the word ummah is right? That's, that's singular, but if I made that possessive, a possessive noun, that would be ummi, which means my mother. Means mother, right? Meaning that the concept of community starts with the woman, while in international law, the nation is called she, not he. Islam boys?
No.
That's why the Prophet on the front of the Quran questions for Moorish Americans is holding up the woman. Right? Because he was uplifted fallen humanity, and thereby doing so, he was uplifting the nation and the community, the global community. Islam boys? So, there is no nation building without y'all. And we can't go and conduct political business without our sisters present. Islam? And now, the sisters are taking their place in the affairs of men. So now, when you go to speak to government, you might have to talk to a woman. You go to talk to the mayor of Atlanta, who you got to talk to? Sister. Islam? All right? Honest, Sister Keisha Lance Bottom. All right? Going forward, it says, yet the fulfillment of them, talking about the obligations, is right in cases where even without a promise, the performance would be consonant to virtue and equity. Those are two words that are mentioned in your Quran quite often. Virtue and equity. In fact, the Prophet says, you know, in reference to the higher self is the mother of all virtues and the harmonies of life, breeding justice, mercy, love, and right. And in there's the word mother with virtue. Islam? Right? In support of his opinion, he brings not only the sayings of lawyers, but likewise the following reasons. He says that the person who makes and he who believes a rash promise are equally to blame. For the fortunes of all men would be in imminent danger if they were bound by such promises, which often proceed from the motives of vanity rather than from a settled deliberation. And the Prophet just said it in the chapter, right? You all with me? Then don't accept it from the hand of the proud. And right after that is the word vanity, he said. Y'all remember that? It's right here on international law, right? It says, and are a result of a light and inconsiderate mind. Lastly, the performance of whatever is in any way just in itself ought to be left to the free will of everyone and not exacted according to the rigid rules of necessity. He says that it is not shameful, excuse me, parts up. He said that it is shameful not to fulfill promises, not because it is unjust, but because it argues a levity in making them. So in other words, there are those that think that making a promise is a light thing, right? And you got to stop people when they promise you that they're going to perform to a particular action. You got to stop them when they do that. So Islam, we'll pause. Let's make sure that, you know, are you a man of your word? You know, are you a woman of your word? Because I'm going to put everything I have behind what you say. Now, if you don't do that, it should be some type of, I should be able to compel you to perform that, right? And we'll get to the word compel, right, later. It says, in support of his opinion, he appeals also to the testimony of Tully. So basically, these are all Europeans that are throwing around concepts that they learned from the scrolls that were left by your ancient Moorish forefathers, right? It says, who has said that those promises are not to be kept, which are prejudicial to the person to whom they are made, nor if they are more detrimental to the giver than beneficial to the receiver. Example. You all have heard of treaties, correct? Okay. For what purpose is a treaty made? Anybody know? Or let's say this. What is a treaty?
It's an agreement.
Agreement. Give me another word other than agreement. Between two nations, agreement.
Covenant.
Covenant. Nobody? Contract. Okay? So now, both parties must be clear to the terms. Islam? Can't be anything hidden, right? They call that an adhesion contract. It's a different type of contract. That's one that constitutes a breach. If the other party finds that it was something that was not fully explained, that automatically breaches the contract. Islam? Right. So we have to be clear on these things as we go forward. So, but see, there are some contracts you can get into that will be harmful to you, right? You know, if you're not aware of what that is that you're engaging into. It says, but if the performance of an engagement is begun upon the strength of a promise, but not finished, he does not require a complete fulfillment of the promise, but only some compensation to the party for the disappointment. So the party that's disappointed should be compensated by the mere fact that you promised something that you couldn't perform. Islam? See, these religious concepts that we have, right? Because the European weaponized the term religion. But religion is law, and law is government. Most of the legal concepts that you have started with those religious ideals. Islam? Right? It says, agreements, he continued, that's the sister's word, agreements, he continues, have no intrinsic force of obligation, but only what they derive from the express contracts, in which they are included, or to which they are annexed, or from the delivery of the thing promised, right? From whence actions arise on the one side, and exceptions on the other, and bars to all claims of recovery. but it is through favor of the laws alone which give the efficacy of obligation to what is only fair and equitable in itself, the obligatory agreements such as express covenants and other things of that kind derive their force. Islam Moors? I want to skip around because I don't want to burden the Moors. It says, this is an opinion confirmed by the wisdom of all ages. For as it is said by legal authorities, that since nothing is so consonant to natural justice as to the will of an owner freely transferring his property to another to be confirmed, so nothing is more so conducive to good faith among men than a strict adherence to the engagements that they have made with each other. We pause there. I'd like those taking notes to write down this name. It's a video on YouTube. Write down this name. Fountain, like a drinking fountain. Fountain Hughes, H-U-G-H-E-S. H-U-G-H-E-S. And the video is called An Interview with Fountain Hughes. Fountain Hughes was an Asiatic who lived during slavery. And in the 1930s, when he was 101 years old, he gave a recounting of what he remembered from slavery. So basically, he's demonstrating from 1830 to 1930, right? So he's talking about, how Asiatics were being sold and so on and so forth, whatever. At a certain point in the interview, and this is his nephew interviewing. At a certain point in the interview, his nephew asked him, said, well, Uncle Fountain, if let's say you had to go through slavery again, what would you do? He said, oh, well, I'll probably grab a shotgun and I would just end my life. He said, I couldn't see going through that again. Islam was? See, here we are on the threshold and the precipice of our people potentially being re-enslaved again. Y'all think that's not possible with the current racial environment? Islam was? You think you, with your fezzes and turbans, couldn't be in a cage, right, next to an Asiatic that don't have his nationality? You think that can't happen? Or is it far-fetched that a person could be in a cage in 2018? Oh, that's right, in Mexico they got some little kids on the border, separated from their parents in cages. Islam? See, the Prophet talked about a great and lawful day which is sure to come, right? He talked about, he said, Allah, the great God of the universe, is not pleased, with the works that are being performed by my people. Islam? Prophet didn't let us off, so we don't victimize. We don't play the victim mentality. We don't believe in the mystical they. They won't let us, and they won't oppress us, and they. Who's the they? It's never defined, right? Or the Illuminati. Ooh. So you mean the ones that got the light? These are human beings just like you. You know that, right? Islam?
Islam.
All right. Let me move forward. It says, freely transporting and transferring his property to one another to be confirmed. So nothing is more conducive to good faith among men than a strict adherence to the engagements they have made with each other. Thus, a legal decision for the payment of money when no debt has been incurred, except by the verbal consent of the party promising, is thought conformable to natural justice. Paulus the lawyer also says that the law of nature and the law of nations agree in compelling a person who has received credit to payment to payment. In this place, the word compelling signifies a moral obligation. And the word compel, etymologically, right, its root meaning, right, literally means to push, right? And if you push somebody, generally you're pushing them against their will. If I run up and push the brother, clearly he don't want me to push him, right? But the whole science is that if you promise to perform a certain thing, and it's not, I am to compel you or to force you to act. Islam? Act 1, Moorish Science Temple of America. Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the Prophet and the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. The assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known before the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Islam? So the Grand Sheik and the chairman is empowered to make law and enforce laws, right? So our dealing with the secular government starts with us first. And we have to make sure that we, if we compact to do a particular thing, that we stay on each other to make sure that it's done. That's the uncomfortable part, right? That's the, there's government and then there's governance. Study both words. Most of us just study the word government. We study the word governance. And governance is the verbal aspect of government. It's government in motion. And that's the part that's uncomfortable because there's a lot of follow-ups. Got to follow up Islam. Did you get that done? Did you contact so-and-so? Did you do such that? Islam? You know, and as a Grand Sheik, my duty is to make sure I delegate, right? You know, not micromanage per se, but delegate just to make sure that these things, delegate the authority and then follow up to make sure that it was done. Islam was, that's why the Prophet gives us, you know, the titles of Sheik, Sheikess, Grand Sheik, Grand Sheikess, Grand Governor, Grand Governess. Islam, these are, even though they appear like nouns, they're actually verbs. Because you can't have these titles and sit and just revel in the fact that I've arrived. I'm Grand Sheik.
I made it.
Made it. I have arrived. This is not a, look. There's one of the forefathers, may Allah be pleased with it, Brother F. Nelson Bay. And the more phenomenal, the more wrote a book called The Words of Wisdom.
Flaming Truth.
It's powerful. Like the Words of Wisdom, so I have that one.
I got a copy here.
Islam. And you know what that demonstration when he talked about that Grand Sheik?
Islam.
Oh, it's work. He said you're gonna be frustrated. You're gonna be this. You're gonna be that. You know, and you know, obviously there's an upside to it, right? But there's a frustrating side to it too, right? There's another thing too from the aspect of being a governor. From the aspect of grand governor, when you issue charters, you issue the Prophet's charter. A little known fact of when you issue a charter, the more science comes in America, is the fact that on the bottom of the charter, right, when the grand governor has to sign off on the charter to issue it, the wording under the signature says noble and prophet, which means that you, as the grand governor, if you or grand governess, if you make, you know, if you get elevated to that point, are signing off on behalf of the prophet to start a temple, meaning that you are, you know, a functionary of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, right? In his absence, in his physical absence. You know the weight of that? It's huge. And all my time, I've been an active member of the More Science of America for 17 years. I was elevated to the position of Grand Sheik in 2006, made Grand Governor in 2007. Time from 2007 to now, in those 11 years, I've only issued one charter. Islam? Not because I didn't want to issue more, right? But because of how serious this is, right? That when you issue this instrument here, Prophet Noble Drew Ali's charter, you know, this is an ancient document. You know, this is really grow to know what it is. You know, it takes on a life of its own. You know, this is giving you, you know, creating a connection back with the present to our ancient form of rulership. Islam? What was the title given to our ruler in Morocco? Sultan. Islam? Prophet Noble Drew Ali revised that in Act 1 and made it Grand Sheik. Islam? Because he knew that a period of time would come when the nation that is called Morocco would no longer be what our forefathers proclaimed it to be. And now it is a kingdom and not a sultan. And the ruler that rules it is not a sultan but a king. Islam? So he's getting us prepared to, you know, rule over our own affairs, right? But you got to give the people back the mind of their forefathers, you know? And it's a lot of study, and all the study is not necessarily law, no, that's a part of it. But the study is the study of you. Know thyself and Allah. That's on our Quran, the cover of our Quran, right? But the word and, if you understand English, the word and is what they call a conjunctive, right? Meaning that anything that's before it and after it are part and parcel to the same idea. So to know thyself and Allah, to know yourself, you are knowing Allah. Where is the nearest place to meet Allah? Islam? You know? Well, it's the Prophet. I love my Prophet. I don't know about y'all, I love the Prophet. Once you get to know him, you know, one of my brothers, which is the only brother I've ever issued a charter to, my brother, Grand Sheik Heru Ranesi-El, Temple number 25 in New York. That's my brother. Islam. He used to be my chairman. Islam. You know, a phrase, you know, when he was my chairman at the time, he used to always say, he said, you know, ones don't love the Prophet. And the only way that he could say, oh, my voice ain't deep enough. He got that deep, you know, Louisiana. You know, ones don't love the Prophet. Because ones, they don't know the Prophet. Islam? Because you can't help but love this man once you know what he did. Once he know what he gave you. You know? I mean, you know, how do you think Paris Hilton felt about her father when he left her $300 million? And they, you know, they might not get along. All families have problems, right? But it can't be that deep. He left you $300 million. Now, he didn't leave you the Hilton Empire because he knew you kind of arrogant. He didn't want to leave you the keys to the empire, right? But he did, you know, my seed, so I'll leave you something. So she got an inheritance, Islam. And most of us think that we don't have an inheritance or an estate, but you got a vast estate, vast. And it ain't necessarily always a physical thing, right? See, brother. But you know, but once you realize what was brought down to you, you know, you can't help but to love the Prophet and love the love instead of hate. Islam? All right? I'm just going to breeze through the last few points, and I'll open the floor for questions. And also, that's the section I just read. If you go to chapter, more, can I get chapter 31, verse 12? I know I got you working more. I hope you don't mind, Sheik. Chapter 31, verse 11 and 12. That's chapter of justice. What does the name Jesus mean? Justice. Islam. Where do we get the name justice? Jesus from? The East, right? Chapter 31, verses 11 and 12.
Islam.
Islam.
When thou sell it for gain, hear the whispering of conscience, and be satisfied with moderation, nor from ignorance of thy buyer take any advantage. Pay the debts with thou owest, for he who giveth thee honor relieth on thy honor, and to withhold from him his due is both mean and unjust.
Islam, boy. So there's a lot of our people, you know, we look at the credit situation like, well, you know, yeah, they gave me the credit, but it's their fault for giving it to me. They shouldn't have gave it to me if they wanted it back. That's my people. Islam? That's ignorant, boys. Islam? You know, so what? It came from the European. If you receive something from them, you have to pay it back. I don't care who you got it from. If you got it from them and they expect it back, you got to give it back. That's Moorish. Islam? Right? It says, Tully in the first book of his offices assigned such force and obligation of promises that he calls fidelity the foundation of justice. And what does the word fidelity mean, Morris? Fidelity.
Trust.
Trust, and more predicated upon this word. So fidelity,
Faithfulness.
root word of fidelity is fadis, which means loyalty. Right? And loyalty is connected to being faithful. Because if you're faithful to somebody, you're loyal to them, aren't you? Right? Like the prophet says, in reference to the husband to his wife, be faithful to her bed, for she is the mother of thy children. Islam? Let's say you're married to a woman that you don't have no kids by, no children by, right? Should you still be faithful to her? Yes, because the children that you get from her are not necessarily always physical children, but your ideas.
Islam.
Brothers, did you know that the woman helps you birth your ideas?
Islam.
That's how bad she is.
Islam.
Islam? If you want to bring something upon a plane to manifest, tell it to her, right? Catch her in the point where she's in a peaceful, loving mood. It's like, oh, but you know, I really want to get this business started. So she want oh yeah, tell me all about it. And she's going to start receiving, because she's fertile ground, huh? Islam? She's going to pull it into the triple darkness within herself. She's going to pull it in and bury that seed deep, right? And she's going to put her emotions on it. She's going to put her love and nurturing on it. And after a while, I ain't got no chance but to grow.
Demonstrate.
If you doubt what I'm saying, get you a good mobile. Get you a good sister. Get a good sister in your life. I bear witness. That's mine right there. Islam? Ever since she came in my life, things began to grow. By way of Allah, all praise due to Allah. Islam, Moors? All right? So again, that principle parlays itself over from the concept of loyalty. So there's a section in Moorish literature when the Prophet appeals to, you know, faithful Moors, you know, true American citizens, loyal Moors. He is on that loyal, right? And in the halls of men, you know, there'll be those that know what I mean by that. But that fides is the word for the hand press. That's another name for the hand press, fides, right? Or loyalty. Again, when I press your hand, I'm saying, well, I'm loyal. Islam? Right? It says, hit that again. Tully in his first book of his offices assigned such force of obligation of promises that he calls it fidelity, calls fidelity the foundation of justice. And your notes, write it down, it's powerful. Fidelity, the foundation of justice. Which Horace also styles the sister of justice. So you have another mastermind that dealt with fidelity being the sister of justice. Again, she. And the Platonists often call justice truth. And we know truth is all is Allah. Islam was? Which Apelles has translated fidelity, and Simonides has defined justice to be not only returning what one has received, but also speaking the truth. Okay? Because a lot of times we claim we want justice, but we only speak partial truths. Police kill a brother, right? We talk about that incident, but we don't talk about everything that created that. We don't talk about that we're not a part of the city council that helps to make the laws, right? That deals with the use of force policies that police use, right? Because if we were doing that, there would be no police shootings of innocent Asiatics. Islam? But as the chairman just demonstrated, you got to be a part of the government, right? And if you were, you wouldn't have to be marching and lighting candles. Islam?
Islam.
All right, it says, the first of these ways, I'm skipping. The first of these ways is where an assurance is given of future intentions, if the assurance be sincere. We have a chapter on sincerity, don't we, Lords? In your Quran. It's a prophet demonstrating. If the assurance be sincere at the time it is given, though it should not be carried into effect, no blame is incurred, as it might afterwards not be found expedient. I thought this was powerful. For the human mind has not only a natural power, but a right to change its purpose. Right? Wise man changes his mind often, the prophet said. Wherefore, if any blame attaches to a change of opinion or purpose, it is not to be imputed to the bare act of changing, they have that in capitals, but to the circumstances under which it happens, especially when the former resolution was the best. Right? So when the wise man changes his mind, it's because of the circumstance that arose, isn't it? And then if he has honor, she has honor, they'll come back to the person they have the contract with. Say, well, this thing ain't going as we planned on it. You know, we need to either amend this, right, or declare this out and come back to new terms. Islam? But not to just cut out because you feel some kind of different way, right? It says, the second way is when future intentions are expressed by outward acts and signs sufficient to indicate a resolution of abiding by present assurances. And the word abide, that's a master's word, if you know anything about it. A-B-I-D-E. Research that word, A-B-I-D-E. And these kinds of promises may be called imperfect obligations, but conveying to the person to whom they are given no right to exact them. For it happens in many cases that we may be under the obligation of duty, to the performance of which another has no right to compel us. For in this respect, the duty of fidelity to promises is like the duties of compassion and gratitude, both in your Quran. In such kinds of promises, therefore, the person to whom they are made has no right by the law of nature to possess himself of the effects of the promiser as his own, nor to compel him to the performance of his promise. So there are terms on compelling someone as well. So it's not about just brute force. You don't govern solely by brute force. So that's what's being done now, because love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice are not at the table. Right? It says the third way, where such a determination is confirmed by evident signs of an intention to convey a peculiar right to another, which constitutes the perfect obligation of a promise, and is attended with consequences similar to alienation of property. Right? And I'm going to do 2 more paragraphs, so bear with me, and then we'll close this portion out. There may be 2 kinds of alienation, the ones of our property, the other of a certain portion of our liberty. Under those of the former kind, we may class the promises of gifts, and under the latter, the promises of doing certain actions. On this subject, we are supplied with noble arguments from the divine oracles, which inform us that God himself, who can be limited by no established rules of law, would act contrary to his own nature. Meaning that Allah's thoughts cannot be circumscribed. You can't limit Allah. Islam? Thus, if a certain thing comes down from one of the oracles, which we call prophets, right, that Allah is to perform a certain thing, surely it will be done. It may not be done in your time. Islam? All right? Because, you know, the thoughts of Allah cannot be measured up by time either. Right? But surely it will be done. I pose a question to Moors every so often, you know, just, you know, as a self-check, you know, for where you are in the movement. And that question is, would you be all right with the fact of with all the laboring that you do in this day and time with the Moorish Divine National Movement, right? Would you be all right that at the end of your life, it didn't get to where you thought it would be, but if you set it up so they could inherit? See, most of us are so selfish that we have to have, you know, the entire nation built, it got to be. But what if it ain't about that? What if we do everything we do, so we set them up, because, you know, they are us. Islam, you know, we accept reincarnation. I know that, right? Islam, reincarnation is real, right?
Islam.
And these babies that are coming behind us, they're you. If you don't do what you have to by them, you're going to suffer later. Islam was? Okay, food for thought. Says, okay, from whence it follows, this is about, you know, it says, you know, God not being established by rules of law. It says, from whence it follows that the obligations to perform promises spring from the nature of that unchangeable justice, immutable truth doesn't change, right? Which is an attribute of God and common to all who bear his image in the use of reason. How many times probably demonstrate reason, you're correct. To the proofs of scripture here referred to, we may add to the judgment of Solomon, you know, which is one of the great fathers. Islam? My son, if thou hast been, this is a quote, my son, if thou hast been surety for thy friend, thou hast tied up thy hands to a stranger. Thou art ensnared by the words of thy mouth, then art taken by the words of thine own mouth, unquote. And that surety is the word guarantee, right? Modern day, with banks, they call it collateral. You know, you got to put up something to get something, right? It says, hence, a promise is called by the Hebrews a bond or a chain, and is compared to a vow. Islam? Say more, we don't take oaths. Islam? We don't take oaths, but we do take vows. Islam? There's some in this room that have taken those vows. Right? They took those vows as sacred before Allah. Islam? And those vows are not to be broken. Islam, Morris?
Islam.
Says, Eustathius in his notes on the second book of the Iliad assigns a similar origin to the word that gives a Greek word in Greek, I don't speak Greek, or engagement. For he who has received the promise in some measure takes and holds the person that has made the engagement. A meaning not ill expressed by Ovid in the second book of the Metamorphoses, where the promiser says to him, to whom he had promised, my word has become yours. So you give your word then becomes the person's word. Islam? After knowing this, there remains no difficulty in replying to the arguments of Cornelius. For the expression of the lawyers respecting their promises refer only to what was introduced by the Roman laws, which gave reforming stipulation the undoubted sign of the deliberate mind. And I'll stop there so as to not burden the Moors. Islam, Moors?
Islam.
So, Moors promise. See, this is the thing, like, you know, I must say, how many members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, registered, proclaimed members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, do we have present? Okay. For those that aren't, that didn't raise their hands, I just like to get you to reflect on a question. Think about the thing. It's rhetorical. You don't have to answer. Think about the things that you heard tonight. Is there anything that you heard that you feel as though that would be good for our people? And if you did hear something that would be good for our people, could you see yourself being a part and partial, or partial means held as a special event, a part and a partial of that particular idea or that particular movement? And if you can see yourself as being a part of that, know this, that here at Temple number 19, we don't rush membership. We get a lot of people that come through the doors wanting to join the temple. And in my early days as a Grand Sheik, man, we write cards left and right. On a card. I know in the city of Atlanta, I've written no less than 300-400 cards. Man. And it's a lot of ills and days walking around by cards that I've written myself, all praise to Allah. But the intentions were not right. Right? Because they believe, and this is not the nationality card, this is just a convenient business card. But they believe that once they receive the nationality card, right, they believe that, I'm like Mo said, I've arrived. All my headaches are going to go away because I got the Prophet's card in my hand. The Prophet said, if you're not careful, the card will burn up in your pocket. You got to do something with it. You got to be an active, not passive citizen. Islam, Morris? All right? So our biggest thing is that we want to clarify the concepts. You see, there are a lot of more Science Temple of Americas around the country, around the nation, right? And every temple has its own customs and laws, and that's permissible, right? And a lot of times we like to take the time to make sure that our fit is the right fit for you, that we can help you unfold in being the best Moorish American that you are, because you are indeed of the Asiatic race. We clearly can't deny that, because I see the olive tone and the woolly hair, brother. I can't see the, what you work with under the turban, but I see your beard looks like mine, right? So when I see that, I see Jesus. I see Muhammad. I see Buddha and Confucius. I see all the ancient divine oracles, and we just want to make sure that this is the right fit, and we want to make sure that you clearly understand the position of the Moorish Science Temple of America, what it means. So the prophet says, he makes a statement, he says, this is the only sole foundation that all Americans, that all Americans must depend upon for their earthly salvation. Excuse me. This is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens. Now, that's a bold statement. I was taught that you always be careful when a person speaks in absolutes. You always pay attention to what was said there, right? So for the prophet to say this is the only sole foundation, right? You might have other affiliations, and praise Allah, that's fine. We didn't come to take nothing from you, right? But for your salvation as an American citizen, the Moorish Science Temple of America isn't for you, right? Because all the other Asiatic organizations don't bring that to you, right? There's a section I'd like to read to you really quick. The prophet demonstrates nationality. And this is volume 2. It's a print version. It's volume 2 from a book entitled International Law. I'm going to write it down. And the author's name is Lassa, Lassa, Oppenheim, O-P-P-E-N as in no, H-E-I-M, Lassa Oppenheim. I think the whole text is 592 pages. Volume 1 is over there. On page 348 of this text, it deals with nationality, right? So Acts 6 tells us, we must proclaim our nationality, right? And this paragraph says, nationality of an individual is his quality of being a subject of a certain state and therefore its citizen. When it says state here, it doesn't mean like Alabama, Georgia. It's talking about a nation, hence, which is hyphenated nation state, right? It says, it is not for international, but for municipal law to determine who is and who is not to be considered a subject. You ever wonder why, we were going through our condition of slavery, no other nation came to assist. You ever wonder why? Because that violates international law. That's like me coming in your house telling you how to raise your kids. I don't have no authority in that house. Islam? That is unless you have a connection how to come from Moorish Science Temple of America. If some abuse, then we can compel you that. Islam works? All right? But it says, and therefore, it matters not as far as the law of nations is concerned that municipal laws may distinguish between different kinds of subjects and or citizens. For instance, those who enjoy full political rights and are on that account named citizen, and those who are less favored and on that account not named citizens, i.e. Negro, Black, and Colored. Nor does it matter that according to municipal laws, the laws of the nation state. Nor does it matter that according to the municipal laws, a person may be a subject of a part of a state, for instance, of a colony, but not the subject of the mother country, provided only such person appears as a subject of the mother country as far as the latter's international relations are concerned. Thus, a person naturalized in a British colony is for all intentional purposes a British subject, although he may not have the right of a British subject within the United Kingdom itself. Make sense? It says, for all international purposes, all distinctions made by municipal laws between subjects and citizens and between different kinds of subjects have neither theoretical nor practical value. And the terms subject and citizen are therefore synonymously made use of in theory and practice of international law. Last paragraph. But it must be emphasized that nationality as citizenship of a certain state must not be confounded with nationality as membership of a certain nation in the sense of race, which they call ethnicity now, because it was written in the 1800s. It says, thus all Englishmen, Scotsmen, and Irishmen are, despite their different nationalities as regard their race, of British nationality as regards their citizenship. So when we talk about a man that's Irish, right? He's still British by nationality because it's called the United Kingdom, and they're all under the Queen. So in the House of Commons and the House of Lords, you have Irishmen, Scotsmen, and Englishmen, all as British subjects under the Queen. Islam? So there's different classes of citizens that the Prophet also taught. Says thus, and that concept right there is also the Prophet refers to as descent nature, right, or national descent. Thus, further, although all Polish individuals are of Polish nationality by way of race, they have been, since the partition of Poland at the end of the 18th century between Russia, Austria, and Prussia, either of Russian, Austrian, or German nationality and citizenship. But that's since been changed. Now the Polish citizens are indeed Polish. Okay, that's changed after World War II. All right? So the Prophet Noble Drew, when he was telling you to proclaim your nationality, and let's remember too, although this is the holy day for the Moors, which ones, have a certain portion of understanding that we're only to talk about high religious concepts, we have to remember that Act 6 is in our divine constitution and bylaws where the Prophet talks about proclaiming your nationality. That's a part of our divine rights, right? Because when you proclaim your nationality, you're tied into a higher right from which all rights are conferred. Islam was?
Islam.
All right. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, or statements? None from our visitors?
No.
Well, I feel much better when people ask questions. Silent Asiatics, it makes me jittery. It makes me very jittery.
They're thinking.
They're thinking. But a lot of times, we have to remember too that, and this is a part of being free too, I don't care if a person even looks like you. Never allow someone to come and demonstrate a particular form or portion of understanding without being able to display evidence of your claims and without you also having the ability to challenge that thought. You can challenge amicably. You don't have to be belligerent, right? But to at least say, well, I don't really believe that. Can you, here's what I believe. And put that on the table. And then we can meet in the middle. Islam? But if I don't know what you believe, and the Prophet teaches that the belief is that which you think might perhaps be true. And you remember, a lot of times we live our whole lives just on belief, right? Because most of us, what we think we know is stuff that we've heard, not stuff that we've actually researched ourselves. You have a whole generation right now who study by way of memes. So they start freestyling. Well, I know this, give me the name and the author that you studied. Well, no, I was on Facebook, or I was on Instagram, and it had this little meme, and it said, that's as far as you extended your study. So, but if you would truly know, you would indeed be what you know. And the only way you can be what you know, you got to put it to the test. So just as most Americans, just remember when you separate into the world, you remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity. You have to ask yourself when you're in the world, what are you bound to? Right? If you know anybody, because I don't want anybody to incriminate themselves. If you know anybody that's ever been in handcuffs before, right? I put it out there. I've been in handcuffs before. And when I was bound to something. It was against my will and I was being compelled, right? But I was compelled to act in a certain way because I couldn't move because my actions were circumscribed, right? And it was because I was out of science and I wanted to live the life of the beast. Hence, I had to be bound to remember civilization. Islam? All right? And then, once, I was able to get out of that situation and, bring, access my higher self, be indeed my higher self, by knowing the illusions of the world, by knowing my lower self, I can indeed, but you know what? I don't need no one else to put no handcuffs on me. I'll put them on myself. Islam? And I'll bind myself to some higher principles. The higher principles that I bind myself to are love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And I strive to dwell somewhere in between those principles, somewhere in the middle. Islam? So it's ironic too that forms the Pentagon, which is the largest office building in the world, right there in DC. That's another topic, all right? But more, just remember that. Remember, just ask yourself as you function day to day, what principles am I bound to, and who's going to hold me accountable? You see? And if you're not allowing your forefathers' works to guide you and hold you accountable, you're out there freestyling. And as a result of that, the Bible even said, lean not to thy own understanding. Islam? And with that, I'll lower the meeting. Islam? Islam? Islam?
Islam.
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 All praise due to Allah. Moorish Science Temple of America, Noble Drew Ali founder, home office, Chicago, Illinois, March 11th, 1929. A warning from the Prophet to be read in every meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must put an end to all radical and agitating speech while on their jobs, homes, or on the public streets. We advocate peace and not destruction. Stop trying out your cars with the Europeans, for it causes confusion. There has been much confusion caused by members trying out their cars. The cars are for your salvation. Failure of obeying my orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members that seek to hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet, or to violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors must obey the laws laid down to them about their prophet, and if they lose confidence in their prophet, give up your card and button, cease wearing your turban or fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. For this is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet, noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet is sending out a divine plea to all true Moorish Americans that they may do their part in protecting the prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet for the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Peace, noble Drew Ali. Islam, Moors?
Islam.
I'm going to read two more writings, proclamations from the prophet, noble Drew Ali, to be proclaimed at every meeting. Islam.
Islam.
I am glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There's a host of jealousy about me and the movement now, about the same people of our side of the nation that claimed it was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme they can to disqualify me so they themselves may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and the uplifting funds. The ones that pay the divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being the head. It has been proven by my works which I've performed in the past few years. To the members of the Moor Science Temple of America, Islam.
Islam.
This is the instructions from your prophet, noble Drew Ali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you saw in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is known now, but the weak comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I, noble Drew Ali. And that is why many hearts have been turned to stone, and many have eyes to see, but cannot see, ears to hear, but cannot hear, lest they would be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah, and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not of what you hear or see, but will sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. The enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah will bless you for your good work. Peace, your divine prophet, noble Drew Ali. Islam,
Islam.
Islam,
Islam.
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 All praise are due to Allah in the highest of honors. His holy and divine prophet, none other, the prophet, noble Drew Ali. Islam, Moors.
Islam.
I give all praise to you all who sacrificed time on a Friday night to come and be with your brothers and sisters. Sit with some long-winded sheiks, burning your eardrums up, got you sweating under your turbans, and, you know, behinds probably numb, respect to your behinds, you know. But the reality is, more, we gotta get this work. We gotta put this work in, right? Because when you've had an entire concept of nation building removed from you, that is not won back overnight, right? So what, you work 9 to 5 on your job, right? Prophet Noble Drew Ali, to a certain point, also worked the job. But then, you know, when the work got too big, he had to leave his job and take up divine work, you know, full time, all right? But the point is, you know, if you work a 9 to 5, when you get off at 5 o'clock, you rest, deal with the kids and all that kind of stuff, get everybody straight, you gotta get into your studies. You gotta call your fellow brother, sister, Moorish Americans, what's going on. Contrary to popular belief, I'm known as the brother that's hard to get in contact with. Not because, you know, I'm arrogant, not because, you know, I'm self-righteous, not because I think I'm on an island or I live it unto myself, but because I'm very, very busy, right? When you take up this work, your time never was, but man was not, right? If I'm not, you know, working, you know, running the barbershop, I'm being a husband. If I'm not being a husband, I'm being a father. If So I'm not being a father, I'm being an author, running a publishing company. Islam, proof, not only writing the book, but editing the book, dealing with the layout of the book, dealing with the marketing of the book, dealing with the distribution of the auto, the whole process. Islam?
Islam.
So, you know, when I do have time, especially evening hours, and I want to apologize to my brother Montgomery Bay, because Mama Moore was trying to reach me several times in the evening.
Islam.
But in the spirit of trying to demonstrate the 24-inch gauge, trying to rightly divide time, you know, evening time, I'm relegated for family.
Islam.
You know, because for many years, I sacrificed family time for the nation. And as a result, my children grew up very quick. And this is my last one right here, and I want to make sure he gets what he needs. I want to make sure my new marriage gets what it gets. It's my second marriage. You know, just newly obligated in January. So I want to make sure on this one, I get this one right. Islam? So, you know, Prophet Noble Drive is not making, you know, ask you to make a sacrifice. He's asking you to bring your families to the Moorish lifestyle. You know, he's not asking you to pull you away from your family. No, bring the children, bring everybody, because the children need to grow up, right, with information that's confirming itself. Because see, if you send your children to public school, you know, they're teaching you the exact diametric opposite of what you're teaching them at home, right? So they have to grow up around other children where wearing a fez or a turban is not something foreign, it's what we do. Islam, you know, you best believe Jewish children support one another in their culture. Islam. In closing, I went to school in high school with a Jewish young man, and I always noticed in school he was very sleepy. I was going to sleep in, you know, first, you know, periods of school. So I would always laugh with him. I was like, you know, what you up, partying all night with him? He said, nah, man, you know I'm Jewish, right? He said, you know, I wake up like 4 in the morning, you know, I make my prayers, whatever, and my father takes me to the synagogue. So from 4 to 7, I'm with the rabbi. He's teaching me about the law, Jewish law. He said, then I go to school for 8 hours, and when I get off at 2:30, I go to my father's business to help him run our family business. I was like, wow. I was like, I'm in no way, and I knew this in high school, I'm in no way prepared to compete with this guy. Because he's getting cultural training, his regular education, and he's getting business training, all in a 24-hour period. Islam, you have to ask yourself, in a 24-hour period, what are you, your wife, and your children doing for the upliftment of fallen humanity? Islam, you know, husbands must take care of, you know, support your wife and children. Wife must obey husband, take care of your children, look after duties of the household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother, become industrious, and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. That's what the prophet told me. Those are the roles in a more American sense. And we must become a part and partial of that and live the life accordingly. Islam? So call people to this wisdom, right? It makes no sense if you're awake and all your friends are asleep, right? Family members. First people you should go to is your mother and father, right? The people that brought you into this world, make sure they have their nationality before they leave here. Islam?
Islam.
There's no failure for the human soul, but you don't want to reincarnate and have to go through this all over again. Islam? Who wants to reincarnate and have to learn who you are? Islam? That's hell. But that's the hell that we created. We are creators and create our own. Islam?
Islam.
But again, not in the spirit of burdening you all. And again, thank you. We want to demonstrate the spirit of gratitude for coming out and demonstrating with us tonight. And like I said, call ones to the faith. And let's get this work. Islam?
Islam.
Everyone please rise. Face the east, which is right ahead of us. Please hold your feet at a 45-degree angle. Stand in your square. Your heels will be touching like this. Right? There's 5 fingers on your left, 2 fingers on your right. Invoking the sacred presence of the 7 Elohim and creating everything that ever was, is, or ever more to be. For our visitors, please adopt a position of prayer that's comfortable for you and giving prayer to our collective creator. Please repeat after me. Allah,
Allah,
the Father of the universe,
Father of the universe,
the Father of love,
Father of love,
truth,
truth,
peace,
peace,
freedom,
freedom,
and justice.
and justice.
Allah is my protector,
Allah is my protector,
my guide,
my guide,
and my salvation.
and my salvation.
By night,
By night,
and by day.
and by day.
Through his holy prophet,
Through his holy prophet,
Drew Ali.
Drew Ali.
Amen.
Amen.
Islam, Moors.
Islam.
Praise Allah.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
حي على الصلاة
Allahu Akbar.